Yeah, I think it's actually catching my mic now too.
Awesome. So everyone saw me do this.
So the farm, the people using it will be able to share one large world and see the other things that other people have made and placed in the world, and it becomes a cloud-hosted virtual world of artistic creations.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. So it's kind of like what a lot of people playing Landmark have been dreaming of. This is something that we've heard a lot of.
Well, there is something that you can do in Landmark you would never be able to do with this. In Landmark, essentially, whatever you change, it becomes visible to everyone else. And this is something very difficult to do. So if you look at how we have designed this system, we have danced around this particular problem. We are not going for it because it's really tough. Like as soon as you want to synchronize whatever people are creating between hundreds, near thousands of people, then it becomes a problem. So we are not really thinking of gameplay for this. This is something that it feels more like work.
Yeah. Now, is this a project that you have been working on, that you started, or is this something that you, like a collective, like a think tank, you guys came together with this idea? Because, I mean, I always see Voxel, I always watch your videos where I used to watch them every month. Like, you'd release those monthly videos, and, you'd be in a world. So does that world have anything to do with the farm? And then on top of that, was this an original idea, or did you kind of, like, join a team that was working on this?
So for me, this was essentially in the beginning. If you remember, the problems I saw we were having as an industry back in the early 2000, they were around this, like how you bring a lot of people to work together, how do you make they don't step into each other's toes. So all this is part of the design. So to me it's really about the automation, the procedural generation, because you want to allow people to create a lot of content easily, and then they have to be able to create together. So I'm a programmer. I have been using source control systems like GitHub, or there was no Git back then, but SVN and things like that. And I saw some kind of source control for content would be really helpful. So yeah, this has been a long time in the making.
Oh, nice.
And there is one thing, right? If I don't think you can create a system like this if you do not use voxels, because I was saying this before. One essential property of a voxel is that the voxel doesn't care what is next to it. Mm-hmm. What this means is you can now merge voxels very easily. So if you have content that is in voxel form, you can add this content, you can subtract this content, and it's something that still holds. You end up with something that makes sense. The data makes sense. If you are working with polygons, you have a big issue, because essentially in a polygon based system, everything is connected. It has to be connected. So you cannot change an element in isolation. Everything has repercussions. And I would say this is the key property of voxels. This is also what makes procedural generation possible. Let's say you have an entity that is able to produce voxels for terrain, and now you can merge this entity with whatever is doing cave systems. If you were doing all this with polygons, it would be quite hard, because essentially it's very hard to sum all the content. It's very hard to subtract one content from another if this is a polygon based system. So to me, all this comes together. You have once you adopt voxels, you open the possibility to bring into large scale procedural generation, and also the fact that many people can come together and work.
As we're talking about this, you're giving us lots of really in-depth information on voxels, and you obviously being such an innovator in the field. And I'm realizing, maybe there might be some people out there in the chat, or that watch this video later on, that actually maybe they don't have like an idea, like at a basic level, what a voxel is. So do you want to actually? We should have probably asked you this in the beginning, but do you want to give your best, voxel for dummy idea? Like, what is a voxel, and what, most basically?
Well, you put me on a spot there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's well, it really depends, right? It depends on how people are using the voxels. In I would say, the easiest way to define it is just to think of a pixel and you say, well, now this thing is on 3D. The thing is, that doesn't help much, because when we think of pixels, historically, the only thing we store in pixels is color. We just have a color for the pixel. So I would say a voxel, it's like a pixel, but in addition to a color, you could be storing additional things. Does that work?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, before moving on, a little bit more with the farm, mentioning being at GDC coming up, are you going to actually have like demos of showing, like, are we going to be able to see this in practice soon, or?
Are you going to GDC?
Well, is there going to be something later that comes out of it?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We will be showing the farm at GDC. So if you come to our booth, you will see, for instance, a little team of people building together. So some will be here in Montreal and some will be there at GDC. So yeah, we will be showing the farm at GDC.
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm really curious to see what that's like. I was reading your blog.
But you will be disappointed, because it's it's very simple, right? Like there is no setup. Essentially, you get a document which defines the world, and then whenever the document changes, you will see the changes. So it's kind of like there is nothing really grandiose about it. It's
Is there a graphical interface though, or is it more data, like programming data?
So there is a graphical interface. We have a tool. It's called Voxels Studio. It's gonna be out very soon. It's gonna be out next week, actually. At GDC, we will make the announcement. And it's a program like Maya or ZBrush or something like that. It's a bunch of icons on a toolbar, and you click on the icons, and you click somewhere else, and you get stuff. It's not sexy, but it's work. This is for work.
Hey man, you're bringing voxels back.
Hey, as an artist, I know that is something that a bunch of us who have been playing Landmark and other creative games have wanted, and we don't care how sexy the interface is.
All right.
One of the things while we have you that I was really curious about asking you was the zebra, kind of the application of that you had on your blog, and the use of that going forward. I know you had mentioned there were some tips and tricks into trying to be able to get that out of there. For what people who have not read this, we can put it in chat. Basically demonstrating the creation of a zebra in a voxel setting. So you're actually using voxels for that data. And the way you related it was just how that can vastly change harvesting and different applications within games. That's something I'm really curious about, because one of the questions I think Diggs also had is somewhat related, is creating characters out of voxels, actually playing a voxelized, a character that is made out of voxels. Is that something that's coming along, or?
So this is coming along, that's for sure, and this is this ties to a question Sen was asking before. It's as whether you can apply a texture to a voxel model, pretty much in the same way you would do with the polygonal model. And when you look at that zebra, this is actually what is going on. If you had very few voxels, let's say if you have let's say just 100 voxels to represent a zebra, and you're storing one color per voxel, you would see that, well, your zebra is gonna suck. It's gonna be ugly. However, if you use the same voxel density, but instead you map an existing texture, a traditional texture, it would be the same texture you would use to do a polygonal model. You can map that texture to voxels as well. So that when we posted about the zebra, this is essentially what we are showing. We're showing that you can have a technique like UV mapping translate into voxels as well. So you can get additional resolution, and this is why polygons they look so well, right? Because you're not storing one color per vertex. You are actually you have limited a limited budget of vertex. You cover your model with those vertex, and then you get additional detail by means of having a higher resolution texture. Oh, I love your cat. Mapped into the voxels, right? Now, the really important part, and this is not something we mentioned at all, is that mapping a texture is just one of the things you could do, right? But if you look at a different problem that you solve very well with polygons, which is animation, this is essentially the same problem, right? Because once you are able to map certain attributes of the surface into the voxels, this could be not only the texture, it could be like the rigging parameters. So this actually ties into how you animate voxels, how you would essentially have any sort of mapping between the traditional assets you would create for games in polygons into voxel form.
So another thing that you'd mentioned earlier, and we talked about a little bit before the show among the hosts here, is that voxels are awesome for procedurally generating, and that was part of why you said you even got started with it, because you could automate the generation. So with something like a zebra, if you were to create a world that you wanted to populate with zebras, and the idea is no two zebras have the same stripes, right?
It's a myth.
Yeah, so if you're using polygons and your artists are having to put every single one of them together, that's a whole lot of work. Would voxels help with a way of creating variation in a pseudo-random kind of way to show some diversity among objects? Like if you created even moving objects like that.
Right. I would say no. I don't think a voxel will give you any particular advantage if you're working with something like a character. In terms of what you can generate for the surface of the character, right? If you're dealing with only a surface, even if you're doing procedural stuff, maybe you can do very well with just polygons. Essentially, let's say you have your zebra and you have like a 2D map that wraps your zebra, so you can run any kind of simulation on top of that space. So voxels will not do anything special for you if you only care about surfaces. And I think this is one of the questions you had, right? Like if I'm doing a game, right? Mm-hmm. Should I think of voxels? Should I consider voxels? So I would say it really all depends on do you care? Does your game care only about the surface of things, or does it matter what's inside? So to go back to the characters, right? If what we are doing is only painting the zebra in different ways, there is no point in using voxels for that. Now, if you want to have something inside the zebra that eventually becomes exposed, then you need to have voxels, because somehow you need to represent what is inside.
Who doesn't want to see the inside of a zebra?
Exactly, yeah. So we don't know how far the stripes go.
The thing that came to my mind was actually catching a fish, skinning it, filleting it, taking out the bones, and then cooking it.
Exactly, and this is the big problem, because it's a lot of data. So if you look at games right now, I'm serious, we are still we are the cavemen of the digital age, right? So future generation will look at us and it's like people running, like living in caves and lighting themselves with fire. This is how we are living right now. I think we are missing an entire dimension from digital content, and which is the inner dimension. And in some cases it doesn't matter, and this is why you manage to have really engaging content that doesn't care about what is inside. But then there are a lot of things you can do only if you know what is the inside of things.
Imagine how cool Surgeon Simulator would be with voxels.
I have an issue. I have to connect. I have to plug my laptop. Hold a second, please.
Okay. I mean, and that, what he was just mentioning is, it's really, I think, less of a do you want your game to have that depth, and like, why wouldn't you want to have let your game have that depth?
Okay, here I'll throw this one at you. So he said about the extra skin that you kind of wrap on the zebra after it's been created to, that's how you apply the texture to have the stripes look all good. So if you want them to have that, kind of procedural effect where none of them look the same, then it's a matter of having that material that you're, then the wrapping on it be set up in such a way that it can be procedurally generated, so each one has its own skin basically applied. Now, the amount of data consideration for that, unless you have some efficient way to deal with procedurally generated zebra skins, it might start to become a really, really big file on your game or in the cache or whatever as it starts to generate all these zebras.
Absolutely, I lost the half of that, but I will agree. I think probably the solution to that is you don't have to generate everything. So if you look at a game like Landmark, the game hasn't generated everything you see right away. So when you dig, only when something becomes exposed is that we are actually having to deal with coming up with the data. So if you start carving a zebra, we don't have to have the entire zebra at the moment. Essentially, we can start coming up with the organs and the stuff as you progress.
And that's part of what I find so cool is and why I wanted to talk about the zebras. And for me as a gamer, you kill something and then you loot it, and all of a sudden there's the skin, the meat, and the bones. And in this way, you actually could be able to be forced to go in and separate each of those out while you're playing. It just sounds amazingly fun to me, I guess. But
like its own little mini game within
Phantom
the game.
X wants to skin a zebra. We should just send you to Africa, bro.
A nice application I see it would be to have like really big monsters, because then you can really carve through the monster. Like imagine like a Godzilla size or like a Pacific Rim Kaiju thing, So, and I think this is one application I would like to see. Essentially you have like a giant monster, and maybe it has a city in the back, and you can start digging through the monster and messing around with the organs. So once you enable this inner dimension, all these mechanics become possible. But I pretty much agree with Zach on this. Like if you don't really feel the voxels, in your project, you should not go for it, because it will not make your project easier. It will make your project more difficult. It may put it at risk. So whatever mechanic you think it requires voxels, you better be sure it's something that really requires the voxels, because they do not come free.
Well, what happens though?
Transformers old cartoon movie where they're fighting Unicron, and Unicron is all made out of voxels, and you're going inside the giant planet. That's what came to my mind when you were talking about that.
I was thinking of skinning the corehounds in WoW. Everyone wanted to skin those corehounds, but you just walk up to it and poke it, and all of a sudden you have corehound skin.
When you guys are talking
cool
about all the awesome, you guys are talking about all the cool things that like you would get out of that, and I guess for me, I just imagine at some point people are gonna like need that. They're gonna, they're never gonna be able to go back to a world of polygons once they've experienced this very, like you said, immersive, very detailed world that voxels can provide. So I wonder, like what is the timeline? When will people start to get upset about that? And that's I guess obviously
it's about the applications, So there has to be a killer application. I would say Minecraft did a lot for this, because maybe it's not something that you are conscient about it, but this is a solid, fully volumetric world, and the kind of feeling you get of just being in this place is very different. It's not something you really know, but it's in the back of your mind all the time. This is like a really solid world. And I would say the killer application is actually physics, because if you don't know what is how things are made, if things are only a surface to you, you cannot really do physics. You have to fake the physics. And physics are really important. Like look at the, I don't know, Angry Birds, right? It's very simple, but physics are very engaging. The physics is essentially what allow you to predict what's going to happen and eventually use it in your favor. So I think this is probably the low-hanging fruit. It is quite difficult, but there is no way you can have realistic physics with hollow objects, because you don't know how much they weigh, you don't know how they will break, you don't know if they need to rotate, around which point they need to rotate. So those are things we have been faking for a long time, and what we have is worlds essentially we cannot change. So you have like a super very powerful weapon, and you can blast an enemy, you can pulverize it, but as soon as you shoot it into a wall, nothing happens, So that may be okay, it could be a really fun mechanic, but as soon as someone devises a mechanic that actually involves that, there is no going back.
Yeah.
So
imagine you could apply it to weapons and armor as well, right? As destructible.
Well, to be frank, I think I'm patient. I think we are still dealing with really high technical issues. The computing power is somewhat limited, but I think this is the pathway into getting a real virtual reality. There is no other way. You cannot fake this. You cannot fake virtual reality. Okay, you have to be true about it. And the way I see it, it's not something it's not feasible right now for everybody. But I think we can provide really good, like Matrix-like virtual reality for just one guy on Earth. Just like we put one man on the moon, we can have this guy. He can experience virtual reality today because we have computing power enough for that. And there is no way you could do it if you don't have a fully volumetric approach.
Well, there's something that I've been wondering about with all of this that we've been talking about here. Voxel technology is still being innovated in a serious way, but I was wondering, is there really a lot of communication between developers of Voxels and people who are working on and innovating Voxels, or is it mostly kind of closed doors because it's all kind of in a state of R&D right now?
So I would say we are friendly, at least with the ones I know. So I know there is this engine which I admire a lot. It's called Automontage. It's a guy called Silas, and he's brilliant. And what the engine is doing is great. There is this other guy Gavan. He has I think the game is called Voxel Quest. So I don't, it's not a zero-sum game. And we're pretty friendly about this. I don't know much about what they do because frankly I don't have the time to look into their technology, and I would say every approach is somewhat unique. Like they're going after different things, So I would say this is very early kind of technology, and it's a very friendly field.
Do you see, or are there already some sort of agreed upon standards for how you store data or how you work on different things to ensure that in the future, as things in development, they expand and then they contract, they diverge and they come back together, and people are going to be moving around the industry over time.
Right.
What kind of plans for that do you have? Like even telecom has open source standards for a lot of their transfer systems.
Yeah. So we're taking this route. This is one of the things I want to achieve with my company. We would like to be behind the standards for voxels. So we, with this in mind, we are trying to make the most simple design possible. So if someone wants to read those voxels and use them in any application they want, it would take them just a little bit of effort to do it. So standardization is a big thing we see in the future. It's not there right now, and it's a bit tricky because it's not like pixels where you're storing a color and you hope the resolution will go up, which it did go up. With voxels, we are storing more information, so it becomes a bit trickier to have a standard. But it's absolutely necessary, and this is something we are doing as a company.
That's good. That's good stuff. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a fun question for you. What is your favorite voxel creation that you've, whether it's through your engine or another engine? What is the most impressive and fun thing you've ever seen? This must be a hard one. Huh?
Well, I've seen things I couldn't believe, like I wouldn't believe this is coming out of our engine. So I honestly I could not remember the names. When I look at let's say the workshop show, with Rosie and Jeff, it's I'm amazed. Like I honestly this is what we were going for. I did not hope it would happen so quickly, right? So I was entirely surprised by the quality of the content of the people the people were putting out. Every time we try our engine, because every time we do something we need to test it, and we try different things and we try to build nice things. Nothing comes closer to what the guys were creating. So I don't know. It's very hard for me to find a single build or identify something that really blew my mind. It happens like every 2 or 3 days. I'm blasted.
Yeah, and that's I'm sure a lot of the builders out there who've been using this in the applications that Voxels are already implemented in, I'm sure that they are happy to hear you say that, because I know that they put a lot of work and effort into these structures, and from the artistic side, and that's a really that's a cool thing to hear the person who.
I was very surprised because it's clear that the people who were building those things, they have real talent, they have real skills, So I was honored to see them wasting their time using a system like that, which was entirely new. Because I'm pretty sure those people could be creating amazing things, let's say on Maya, on professional packages. So I have the feeling that many of them, they make their work, they're living as designers, as content creators, using different tools, right? So I was surprised that they were jumping on this technology. I was expecting, at least at the beginning, it would be more like amateur. Like it would be hard to find a guy who looks like professional doing this kind of work. But suddenly that become kind of the norm. I would see a lot of builds that are clearly done by someone who's immensely talented. So that was a surprise.
Well, this might make you feel even better. Actually, I don't know if you're familiar with Fugazi.
I know who Fugazi is.
Yeah, absolutely. He works at UPS. I don't think he has a formal degree or anything. He's a good friend of mine, and so it's, if anything, that's credit, of course, tons of credit to Fugazi for his amazing design, but really awesome, and kudos to you for creating a system that can allow somebody who maybe just has a little bit of a mind for design or whatever to take what you've something that you've really created and help and turn it into something so professional and beautiful. So
now that you say that, I would swear that Fugazi in particular is a guy who works for Blizzard or something like that, creating art. Because when I see his stuff, that this is how it comes across. So I'm really surprised.
I thought he was an architect the first time I met him. I was like,
well, it's clear he's an architect, and it's clear he's a designer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's got the visual eye.
Yeah, taking that question a little bit further, is there anything that you want your engine to be able to do that you just can't get there just yet? Is there anything that we've not even thought about that you?
Well, I think you all have used the engine at some point, and you have been frustrated by the shortcomings. The same happens to us, right? So the first thing we are trying to see is how we can increase resolution. So we see a path into that. I think we can be cutting the voxel volumes by half just by using different algorithms every year or so. But it's not something that happens immediately. So this is the main source of frustration for me, because I would like to have something right now that is behaving exactly as I know it will be in a few years from now. But we are not there, so I have to be patient. This is what a virtue I lack.
I have one question. I feel like at this point it could probably more or less be boiled down to a yes or no question. Do voxels have much application for 2D projects, like 2D platform sandboxes, or even having an interactable, deformable sort of UI, or is it really specifically for 3D space and 3D space only?
No.
No,
actually,
okay.
the way I see it is, it depends, right? You can create, like if you're into the retro kind of thing, you can have something that creates the illusion of being a pixel art, but then it has a little twist, you know, that it's what eventually is going to catch your eye. And the only way you can get this is if you're really volumetric, if you're really 3D. So it really depends. If you want to really have something that is flat, is 2D, well, you just use pixels. But if you want some kind of funny pixels, voxels can help you a lot there.
Cool.
Well, I think one of the other things we were curious about, if I don't know if you can answer some of this or not, is kind of where you think, 5 years from now, where do you see your company, or where do you hope to be?
In Florida, I think. I don't know. It's I have no idea. I feel this is huge. I would like to see most of the content that is created out there to be created using our tools and our platform. So pretty much like if you're writing source code, you would consider something like GitHub. You would put your team on GitHub. I would see teams using our systems to produce more, to create better things. So this is where I want to be in 5 years from now. Essentially, we want to be the clay of which virtual worlds are made of.
Dorkish in chat says that in 5 years you guys are going to own Google. It's a good goal.
But it's going to crash Google.
Well, it's really cool. It's so great to have you on the show, and we got to talk you probably met a couple of us from at SOE Live, but to meet somebody who's been such a maybe whatever it sparked your interest in. Well, we already talked about what sparked your interest in voxels, but whatever made you really sit down and get this all done, it's really such a kudos. There's so much kudos to you for actually doing it, and making gamers have something to look forward to, because and we haven't really talked too much about your gaming history, or what you if this is something that you envision only for gaming or outside of gaming, but as a gamer, there's so much potential and so much that we can see, and I only imagine that it's even limited to what you see as somebody who is actually sitting there with this whole world in front of you and trying to put it all together. But it's also really cool to know that you're patient, because that probably is a really useful skill when you're a programmer.
That's probably the only skill you need. You have to be patient, and you have to be you have to be greedy. It's about grit. However, this is not a single man project anymore. For a while now, for years now, it's actually a team. I have a team of people working with me, so I have remained the face. Well, I don't show my face, but I've been in the front of this company and talking to the people, and sometimes it is not fair for the people that are working with me, because they have contributed a lot of the stuff that is exciting people, making people excited about voxels. So as a gamer, I don't play much games. I don't have time, and I see myself more as a toy maker. Like I don't play with the toys much.
Is that something that you had?
Yeah, I
were
have
you
a lot
interested
of,
in toy?
Yeah,
Sorry. Oh, are you interested in toy making at all? I mean, is this something that you've
Absolutely.
You've
So this is what I love. I have a lot of curiosity, right?
Yeah.
So to me, what drives me is, well, I haven't seen this done. This is something that that would be unique. I want to see it, you know, and then I go after it. Once I have it, well, it's done, you know. Let's go to the next thing. So games. There is one aspect of games that is about that, but there is a big thing about games which is about how you make a game fun, how you make a game compelling, and this is entirely different skill which I don't think I have.
Well, when you guys started with, when you started making this for that project, or when it was inspired by that project in Canada, did you eventually see this becoming like an engine for video games? Or
Absolutely. So
yeah.
I try to predict the future. I say, well, in the long term, in the long run, like we're gonna have a lot of free time, and probably entertainment is gonna be a big thing, right? And we will need a lot of content, and we will see people burning through the content very quickly, probably at higher rates at which we can produce the content. So that is the curiosity part for me. Like, how do we manage to solve the content problem? So how this manifests in which particular games or scenes, or worlds, this is not that relevant. To me, what really is driving me is how you solve this essential problem. I did with a bunch of friends. I did a game before. Actually, I used to do games. So we had a game studio. We got published twice, by a French company, then by Sega. And I really enjoyed making games, and at the same time I hated making games because it's really frustrating. You put your heart into it, and it's like any art product. You have no idea what's gonna happen, right? So it's you need to have a thick skin if you're gonna do games, because it's really tough.
So one of the things, well, before I move on, hosts, do you guys have any other questions? Anything else? I was going to move on to some of the community viewer questions, but I wanted to make sure if there were any others, you asked them.
Oh, I can go for days, but let's get the community involved here and see
I'm sure we could.
For sure.
One of the more interesting questions, popular questions that I can see here, was actually asked by two people, surprisingly. The specific question is, how do you think you could manipulate voxels to show erosion, rot, and other debilitating effects on the environment and creatures of a world?
I love this question, because to me this is where we get to shine, right? So let's say you build something, you start with something. This is the initial setup of your canvas. Then you can release a number of agents which are going to be all automated into your content. So essentially things like where does moist appear, right? What parts become eroded, in your building, where, like, how it decays, how essentially it's about entropy, like how this thing progresses in time. Those are things we now can compute. And if you look at the industry, we already went through that route. If you remember, for instance, Pixar movies, right? In the beginning, if you're gonna light your scene, you would have the scene designers placing every individual light, and they would fake the colors and the reflections. So everything had to be made by hand, right? And they were beautiful movies at the time, right? Eventually, they made a switch into physically based rendering. So when you look at one of the movies that are coming out, you would see that every pixel it's getting its color, not by something that a human did. Essentially, you unleash a bunch of agents again that are computing what's going on with the photons, right? And this is what we call physically based rendering. But light is just one of the things that are happening in the real world. So just like you have light, you have like you have mechanical things happening. You have other things you can compute as well. So the same degree of realism, right, you see now with the illumination, you can have it essentially with every aspect of your scene, and you are not supposed to do it by hand anymore, because right now it's very difficult, right? If you want to create something that looks it's not really realistic, it's plausible, like it could be all fantasy or really toon style, but there are some rules that tell your mind this place it's okay, and a lot of that can be computed. So if you're representing your world as voxels, you get to do that, because when something breaks, you know how it breaks, where it should land. If you can compute what are the dark places, where you get water, where you get snow, things like that. So this is very interesting to me, and this is the automation side of the overall effort we're trying to do.
That actually tied into another one of the questions, which was dynamic water, which I think is something everybody's been wondering about. Is that something you guys have been able to do within your engine?
Absolutely. So the way we tackled water was using a more generic system, which is called a cellular automaton, right? So it you can fake water using that. It's not very good. So the point at what we are right now is I would like to have a fluid simulation where things like pressure they actually matter. So if you're creating, let's say, a system, you could build like a pump and you could drive water from one point to another. So we had some success in creating something like that does some of the things you would see water doing, but I'm not really happy with the results, because again, what I really care about is having something that behaves like it would in the real life, and we're at a point where we can do things that are solid, are static, but as soon as you start with the mediums, we call those things mediums. As soon as you start with the mediums that have a lot of noise, a lot of change at a very high rate, all the same issues you have with voxels, that you even feel them when things are solid, now they multiply, they become increasingly difficult. So this is a problem that will be there for some time, and this is not only about water. Like the same thing is like well, if you have fire, if you have hot air, things like that. So it really depends. It's something, water is something you can hack very quickly. Like if tomorrow we need to do let's say a game and it has plausible water, we could do that. But if you really, if you ask me about water, I would say there is a long way to go.
And the other thing that was another kind of commonly asked question, and actually I think we had wanted to ask you as well, we just didn't, was when you start building bigger cities, the level of detail, how much of a performance hit, or what kind of issues can come up once you start compounding all of these things? Well, for example, Landmark, as cities start to get bigger and things start to build, has that been an issue?
Well, it may surprise you. I don't think this is an issue at all. It's just an issue or a topic we have postponed for a long time. The reason why is the real front line is in the LOD 0. Essentially, this is what is near you. As you have levels of detail that are more distant, then you can start applying the same tricks you would essentially find in any other product that is non-voxel. So it's about that, about how much information essentially you can have. But the reality is, as the features are more distant, it takes longer for you to perceive whatever changes to them, right? So let's say if you're close to a character, you're only a few meters away, and this character changes something, you are supposed to see this change right away, right? And this is what I mean by the front line. But now if this character is 2 kilometers away and they change something, do you have to see that right away? Maybe not, because you don't have a way to know what's going on. This is essentially your event horizon. It has a much wider span there. So we get more time to deal with that, right? And essentially all the tricks that you would see applied in a product that you would consider having acceptable levels of detail is something you can do here as well. The real challenge is in the stuff that is close to you, make it good look, because if it looks good and if it holds, then from this you can derive, you already have the information, you can produce any sort of view, any sort of baking that your particular project may need. But this is something that you need to design for. Essentially, let's say if you're making an MMO and traditional ways, and there is a city that you can see a few miles away, and you want to see like the little spires, on the towers. Well, you have to plan for that. You need to tell your artists, well, this is the polygon density we were going to have at this distance, right? So you can do pretty much the same with the voxel content, because essentially you already have all this information in really high definition. So you get to filter it, you get to repurpose it in any way you think your project can display it. So I know it leads to a lot of confusion, because you get all the cheese, the Swiss cheese things, and the melting of things. It's just how it breaks when you're looking at this, and no consideration was taken on that. But we're getting to this.
Very cool.
Cool. Now, I have a question for you, Miguel, and it's a bit deep. All right, it's a philosophical, maybe potential question. It's basically, so you talked about physics, right? You talked about physics, and it's very difficult, or it's not possible. One of the two with voxels right now. It's very we're not all the physics aren't really there now. In reality, right? As a human, we perceive the physics that we know, and it exists around us, and it's kind of constantly, it probably will evolve, and we'll start to learn more as a race, and physics will start to make more sense. We'll uncover more physics. Now, with all this stuff being said, do you think that that voxel engines will catch up to, or do you think that gaming, these engines in general, all engines, will catch up to the physics that exist in the real life today, or before we actually can uncover more cosmic and sort of bigger scale or quantum physics, do you think that we'll get to basically things like water and things like dynamic water and things like a lot of the really crazy and difficult physics to achieve in gaming, or do you think that first we'll uncover more that will change the whole way we look at physics?
Well, I think there are diminishing returns, right? So if you make a game that is about time travel, okay, or perceiving time as a dimension, or having additional dimensions, and having physics, carried through all this in a consistent way, maybe you got a really working mechanic there. At the same time, we manage as a species, right, as humans, we manage to live and be happy in a world that we perceived as really, really simple. Essentially, the apple will fall on your head, and that's pretty much what you need to know, right? So if you're looking at just games, everything becomes secondary to making the game entertaining and appealing, right? So if having advanced physics is a part of that, I would say, yeah, we will absolutely see it. And I love this example, Angry Birds. The physics are amazing, right? And however, the presentation of the game is completely simplistic. So it doesn't have to be a really realistic approach on reality for you to consider physics an important part of your design. So I would love to see something like that, but at some point I think it may not pay. Essentially, does relativity matter? If you are shooting aliens, I don't know.
I mean, you know what? As I'm sure you've noticed, like lots of gamers have a lot of opinions, and they get very upset when they, something is. They call it immersion, right? And they get upset when something doesn't feel right, So, it's really been an interesting thing to me to think about, like you said, going through, let's say, a wormhole, or like the concept of that, like when can video games simulate that in a with the video game physics, if it could ever do that? I don't even know if that'd be possible. And with voxels, with them having limitations as far as correct me if I'm wrong, voxels, you were saying before, voxels are harder to create physics for than polygons, right?
It's exactly the opposite. So,
okay, sorry.
So if you have only polygons, you cannot do physics. Well, you have to fake your physics. You have to pre-bake the physics. Only if you have voxel information, if you're fully volumetric, you can predict what happens to things. So essentially, let's say you have an apple, right? And the apple is made of polygons, and I throw it at your face. How much is that gonna hurt? You don't have a way to know, because what I threw at you is only the surface of an apple. I did not throw a real apple, right? But if it is a real apple, if it is a voxel apple, then I know how much it weighs. I would know how much energy, kinetic energy, is into it. And I would know exactly how your face will look after the apple hits, right?
Absolutely.
It's just an example. It's not. I'm not throwing actual apples.
I mean, hey, I'm kind of hungry right now. I wouldn't mind.
I was gonna say you can throw one for him. That's no problem.
You're okay with that? Okay.
Well, it's kind of interesting. So then, conceptually, voxels will help us achieve a more cosmic game potentially. Again, bring us there maybe faster and in a better light than the sort of polygon worlds.
So things like structural integrity, for instance, you cannot figure out something like that in a polygon world. And if you have built games, you know how game scenes are built. Like, let's say you have the terrain, and then you have a bunch of things that are inserted into the terrain, but those are like you have meshes that they intersect each other. So it's all really it's very fake, and it works. One example I use is Diablo 3, right? So if you play Diablo 3, this is not a 3D game, right? This is a 2.5 D game, because the way the assets are built in a way that they can only show you a side of them, right? And it works beautiful for them because it's a beautiful game, right? However, this is essentially the same thing we are looking at when you look at a game like Crysis, right? It's all 3D, but we're still missing a dimension. I think in the future this will start to show. This is where this generation will age. This is probably it's going to be the identifying fact of the current generation.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm still just amazed and stuck on the idea of being able to skin a zebra, and I don't know why. It's something another question that came up, and I think this is more related again to the engine necessarily, or what you've been able to do with it. But is there something that, as you've been accomplishing all of these things, is there one thing that has stuck out to you more than the others as sort of your greatest accomplishment, or what you're most proud of?
Well, I didn't think any of this would be possible. So when I remember driving, in the highway, I was looking at the posters. They were like posters around, and I say, well, if this is made of voxels, can I really see the posters for how long? Where is going to be the first one I see? If there is a window in a distant building, will I be able to see that? And all those were big questions, and this is the kind of question you have in engineering. You have no way to know it's feasible or not unless you do it. But there was a lot of risk. So as soon as I start seeing the first results, I saw there was something new. At least it was new for me, and that was a moment for me.
Very cool.
Yeah. Actually, there's another interesting question just put up too. Can voxels have different strength properties? For example, a voxel made out of iron would take longer to break than a voxel made of wood.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is the beauty of it. So let's say you start smashing a wall, and you can actually progress very quickly, right? But as soon as you hit the what's the name? The crowbars? No, what? the steel inside the wall, then you will be slowed down because now you're interacting with much stronger voxels. And the same applies to any physics properties. In some of the experiments we have done, we assign, let's say, a set of voxels that they weight less than air, and we connect those to voxels that they weight more than air, like let's say stone, and you would see that the thing actually flips, right? Whatever is pulling goes up, and whatever is bringing the thing down will remain in the lower part. And all these things happen naturally because those things, they have different properties. Friction is another example. Let's say I have a brick, right? And I throw it, I make it slide through the ground. If the surface is ice, it will go a lot further. And we have all these things right now, and it's actually quite simple because we just need to store these properties per voxel.
You just mentioned friction. We got a question about friction. Do you have taking this further of applying real-world interactions, kind of treating voxels almost like as atomic structures in an overall system? Do you have thoughts or ways to bring in things like melting and change of state?
Absolutely, yeah. So this ties into the procedural generation aspect. So these agents, let's say weathering, you may get to design how fast you want it. For instance, we can, and this is not the same example, but I think it relates. We can grow a forest. You can say, well, I want a forest in this valley, and we can simulate 1,000 years in a few seconds, right? And you get your forest because you are in an editor and you want the forest. Like, you don't want to wait that long, right? But if now this is a game, right? And somehow, yeah, you have hundreds of years happening in the game time. So we can run pretty much the same logic, but it will run at much slower pace. So things like erosion, the breakage of things, the weathering, essentially whatever is bringing entropy into the thing, you get to decide how fast, how quickly you want to run it through.
Cool. Nice.
We are starting to get towards the end. There was one other question actually just popped up that I thought we start heading out, and that's, can voxels be given motion or animated? For instance, attaching voxels to a rotating engine causes the voxel to spin.
Yeah, so absolutely, and this is what we're going for. So voxels is just content. If you look at the way we perceive the world, we as humans, we like to name things, right? So we have Mount Everest, but where does it start, right? So sometimes all the things are connected, and what is an object, what is not, it's not that clear. But sometimes it's quite clear, right? So I could have something like this glass, right? And you see I can move it, and the composition of the glass, it doesn't change. So you can think of as this living in a very different grid. So it's an object, and if it were to break, now you could have a lot more objects, and they would be all made of voxels. So it's not that different than what that you would have, let's say, in a traditional polygonal system, in which you have instead of having just one single mesh that has everything you see in the world, you actually have different entities that they move. So this is one form of where you have voxels moving in respect to another. But then you can have a single object, let's say like me. Well, you can go and bend, you see, your arm, and I could still be made out of voxels. And it's pretty much possible because it's no different than what we have been doing for the UV mapping. So instead of storing the UV mappings, this is how you get the zebra texture into the zebra voxels. We can get just the assignments to the bones. So I would know essentially what voxel maps to a bone, to a particular bone. And since in our particular case we work with polygons, right, we would be applying all these deformations to the polygonal models. So if you work with content creation systems, let's say like 3D Max, right, you would create a character and you create like a pose that is like this, right? and this doesn't change really. This is how the original character is. So you can think like your voxels would be like this, but then this is all rigged, right? So from this we produce the polygonal model, and we proceed to deform the polygonal model in the traditional way. The difference is whatever edits you do, let's say a bullet hits me, right? Or like a cannonball hits me, and it will take all half my shoulder, right? So we can compute that. We can see how this this shape of the cannonball maps into this space. Now we would have to deform it. We can subtract that, and the animation can continue, right? So it's up to you now as a game designer to decide what happens when the guy is hit by the cannonball. But we can update we can update the mesh. We can have a new mesh, and continues to be rigged. Pretty much in the same way you can have a zebra, where you have the surface applied to it, and you can start carving pieces out of it. It still holds. So this is very cool, and we will see some of this in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Well,
really, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that sounds very data intensive. Like that, is it? I mean, to have something come through, have to hit something, and then because, like you said, it's all these different points of data for each voxel. Like, is that a lot more computing power than something that you would? I mean, it seems like it would be compared to like a polygon world where something like that would happen.
But the thing is, you would not be able to do it with polygons. So you're comparing zero versus something. But it's quite fast.
Well, it has to be scripted, I'm guessing, right? Like in a polygon
you'd have to have that
yeah.
shoulder able to come off in the poly version.
Exactly. So the thing is, this is not slow. Like if you are let's say if you have played Landmark, you can get like a pretty big sphere, and you can take it out of a model. This is essentially what you're doing. You're just editing the voxels. It's not trivial. I mean, this is why we managed to survive as a company. This is what we do. Like, if everyone could do this, I'm not sure we can do it so well. But anyway, it's tricky, but feasible. You can have this happening in real time. That's for sure.
That's awesome.
Well, we are unfortunately at the end of our show time here. Did anyone else have any questions or anything that you want to say?
Is there any place where we can get the names of the rest of the people working on Voxel Farm, just in case anybody wanted to take a look at the the list of people to help get their names out there?
It's a good request. I think I will be putting up the name. That I don't want other companies poaching my people. That's the whole thing, yeah?
Yeah.
So actually, if you want to meet them, like a big chunk of the team is going to be at GDC. If you guys are not there, I think we will start making the circuit more. If everything goes well with our offerings, we are just starting. It's gonna be just something a bit early access, but I want the people to be more involved. So you will see the team members maybe doing streams or.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, from us then, and from everybody else, thanks to you, and then of course thanks to everybody else who's been working on the project with you. That's the important thing, that they do get the credit that they deserve for helping build such an amazing system.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we very much appreciate you joining us. This has been a wonderful time. Is there anything you want to say to mention GDC? Anything else coming down the line for you in Voxel Farm, or that you can share?
Absolutely. I think next week is gonna be big for us. We are releasing something next week. I don't like to make announcements or promises or create hype. I rather just put the stuff out. And if it's good, it will have a long life. And if it is crap, why go through all the hype, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see how that turns out. I don't think anybody knows, but something is coming out next week. So please be sure to check us out.
And that would be on your Blogspot site, or?
So just go to voxelfarm.com.
Gotcha. All right. Well, for everyone else, just in general with Theory Forge, as you guys can tell, we are kind of broadening out. So there are going to be some other shows popping up that we'll be tweeting out about. But again, Miguel, great having you here, and we can't say thank you enough for spending some time on a Friday and evening night to be with us.
I have no life, so it's okay.
The program struggle.
We very much look forward to seeing what that is next week. So again, thanks for being here, and
My
Saji. I can't see anything. I don't know if you realize that, Miguel.
Should we
Skype
should we talk
is-
a little bit about the like some of the changes, or do we want to hold off on that?
Well,
A lot
Or
of
some of
that
the
will be
new
coming
features?
up. Next show we're doing Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. Velix will be hosting the Revival show, RP-focused show. If you want to be prepared for that show, they even have like a reading list. It's pretty crazy. They're really in depth on the lore of Revival and H.P. Lovecraft. I believe what's the book they're reading?
It is H.P. Lovecraft that it's involved with. Said it is H.P. Lovecraft that it's involved with.
Yes, they have a specific book, something Innsmouth, I think.
yep, it's in chat right now. So.
Okay, good. All right.
All right.
I don't have anything. I don't think we need to go over
Cool.
anything else.
Okay.
So thanks, Miguel, for coming. Really appreciate it. Anybody else has something last minute? Speak up, or we're fading out.
Fading out into the abyss.
All right. Hey,
Bye, guys.
all right. Thanks again,
Thanks
Miguel.
to you. Thanks